Hello ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to do a 10.2 competitive meta tier list. This is of course only tied to competitive. A solo queue tier list is completely different. I have some criteria that I'm working for. I'll show you the support tier list right here. There is S tier, A tier, B tier, C tier, niche, bait, and hidden OP. Hidden OP is something that doesn't necessarily need to be OP, but it's something that I think has a place in the meta in some specific cases that I'm gonna go through. S tier is you can't go wrong with picking these champions. A tier, also you can't go wrong, but there are some niche situations where it's definitely worse, especially against the S tier champions. And then B tier are some things that are picked occasionally like counters, but most of the time will not find that much play. And C tier, it's like, whatever. And then niche is very dependent on team composition. So I'll give you some examples. So S tier, with support, of course, you need to keep in mind that what you pick together with the support always matters. But in the meta of AD carries, where everything is about Aphelios, Senna, and these AD carries that aren't necessarily that mobile, Varus, then Tahm Kench is very powerful. Also provides you a safety tool against Nautilus and Leona, even though Nautilus and Leona can have a good matchup into Tahm. It's not necessarily a counter. The ult is also very powerful in later games. It can be used, at level 11. It's almost a global. And this is something that TSM didn't do in their game against Immortals, but it can definitely be there. The reason Rakan is here too is because of Xayah Rakan, of course. I think Xayah Rakan in general is very powerful, and it's very difficult to find yourself in a position where you're wrong. I was considering putting Leona in S tier as well because of the matchup into Xayah Rakan and also the matchup into Tahm Kench, but I think the weaknesses of Xayah Rakan are very small, even though you can, of course, pick any A tier champ into Rakan or Tahm Kench and be fine. I still think Rakan and Tahm Kench will win more games in the long run. A tier, of course, the classic. I'm going from left to right. Nautilus, I think, is a bit stronger than Leona because of the potential of putting Nautilus mid. I don't know why everyone forgot about putting Nautilus mid lane, but FPX played it one game, and I think a lot of teams in the LEC should definitely pick that up, but more on that later. Leona is very powerful. Braum as well in the current meta is very powerful too. Braum doesn't have the greatest matchup into Leona, Nautilus, or Rakan for that matter, but he's very good against Aphelios, has synergy with Aphelios, has synergy with Senna, and it all comes down to the AD carries that are being played. B tier, I think, is pretty self-explanatory, just a bunch of AD supports that can be played but aren't necessarily that exciting. I think there is very little trash players that are good enough to play it over the champions that are in A and S tier. That's why B, like trash is like the Lee Sin of support, there are some players that are really good at it and can play it, but in general I wouldn't allow it. C tier Pyke, I don't even know why I put Pyke on C tier, but I don't really want to change it. Pyke is really dependent on what kind of juicy thing you pull off with it. I put Taric in the niche because I've seen people play Taric Pyke. There is Taric and whatever disgusting combo, Taric Lucian, Taric Tristana. There are cases where Taric can be good. Zilean in some cases can be picked into Braum, and sometimes Zilean can be a winner in terms of what your composition provides. Morgana as well. Sometimes Morgana Draven, Morgana Kate can be the winner, especially since Xayah Rakan is, in my eyes, something that should be heavier prior. And then, of course, Bard with, Bard, same way. There are some mid laners that are not that mobile, AD carries that are not that mobile. When people playing Senna, Aphelios, and Tahm Kench, I think Bard definitely could find his place again. Because I think the idea that North America has with the high prior on Tahm Kench is very strong. I don't think there's any supports that you can go terribly wrong with, so I wouldn't put anything in the bait category. Hidden OP, I put Ornn here because I think Ornn support can have a lot of success because there are some specific counters to Ornn top, And then Ornn bottom can definitely do fine into some of these matchups. Of course, you don't want to put it against Braum, but sometimes when the enemy picks Braum and you put Ornn into bottom, maybe you can get away with picking something top lane that is better. Just the whole flex potential of it, I think, is something that teams can explore more. I think Ornn definitely can be lane bottom, since you can use your Unstoppable and block some of the Nautilus hooks and work your way through it like that. The reason I put Shen here is because Shen, another flex pick, but Shen does super well into the Nautilus and the Leona. Because when they use Dredge Line or whenever they engage with Leona E, you can just put down your W, and with your W you can basically parry the auto attack that is going to CC you, whether it's Nautilus auto attack or Leona Q. This is definitely something that gives you a lot of room in the matchup, and it allows you to experiment in the early game if you play like Shen Talia, or you play Shen Varus or something like this, something that has a decent all-in. Maybe Shen Varus is not the greatest, but I think Shen definitely has a place in the meta because eventually LCK is going to start. They're going to show us the Shen support is super, super strong. They're going to play a top-heavy game, and they're going to use Shen ult on top and win every 3v3, and it's going to be quite the pressure point, especially if the mid lane pool is like LeBlanc and the top lane pool is something that can hard commit like an Aatrox, then I think Shen can be super, super strong. I think Shen will be one of the staple picks that some teams pick up and some teams will get some free victories off of. Nami, the reason I put her on hidden OP is because I think Nami has the potential to create some very nasty combos. Her E is very powerful, and even more so when you play it together with an AP carry that buys Magic Penetration. Magic Penetration scales off of the E that Nami applies, and there are some mid laners specifically that reach some specific benchmarks when Nami uses E on them. So when Tahm Kench is being played, when Braum is being played, maybe you have room to pick a Nami, and then with some nasty combination, whether it's a poke champion or an all-in champion, Nami E can be very powerful. Fiddlesticks is another one where I think it will be difficult to play Fiddlesticks into Nautilus and Leona, but into the other pool of champions, you definitely have a lot of room to create some exciting opportunities. Fiddlesticks Fear is almost by itself a reason to go cleanse and to QSS, so that can be very gruesome, and I think it can be very interesting to find, for example, if the enemy bot lane is Senna Braum and you have a Fiddlesticks, I think you'll have a lot of opportunities to all in and to cause havoc for the enemy team, because the base numbers are so high for Fiddlesticks, and the fact that he has space to buy some spell penetration in his build now because of how the goal has changed in support, I think Fiddlesticks is definitely strong, and it's something that we might see. Okay, so I hope the flow of it makes sense. We're going to continue on to the next role, and naturally we're going to go to the AD carry. The AD carry role, I don't have any pictures for Aphelios and Senna, so I put Thresh as Senna and I put Akali as Aphelios because Akali is also OP. Senna, by far the best AD carry in the game, has no weaknesses, does good damage to tanks, has a great build path, has 0 mana issues because the designers didn't know that people are going to buy more mana on this champion. Heals, does good in long fights, does good in poke, does good in all-in because the burst of the R, has a global, has a great lane phase, has a great keystone, has a great, everything about Senna, there's very little to complain about. E is very broken, W is also very broken, the root duration is super long, the range is super long. In general, the kit is just plain broken. It is one of the best AD carries that has ever existed in the game. Second S tier, I put Xayah, only with Rakan. I think Xayah Rakan, when Senna is out, is definitely, the top tier bot lane that you want to play. I think Xayah Rakan, I would choose that over Aphelios every time. Right now, coming into 10.2, we have a lot of Aphelios nerfs coming in. These nerfs hit very, very hard. At the same time, I don't think players in competitive are good enough of an Aphelios to justify the size of these nerfs, because Aphelios is also getting nerfed in 10.3. But I put it on A tier because the champion is still relatively strong and has a lot of potential in terms of creating crazy, crazy good moments. So I think Senna as I have S tier, A tier I would put Aphelios and Syndra. So something that you might not know, Syndra was disabled, and this is why we didn't see her at all. She is one of the best mid laners in the game right now, probably even better in the bot lane. She is very dangerous in the bot lane, has a very easy way of controlling the wave, has very, very good range, so it's harder to commit on her with, of course, Nautilus and Leona. And on top of that, she has a great matchup into Zairakan, so there is a lot of reasons why Syndra is strong. The only sad part or the bad part about Syndra is that it might be difficult to find AD damage in the mid lane right now, but I think Tristana should make a resurgence eventually. B tier, these are the AD carries that will be weaker in the game in comparison to the AD carries that we see in the top 4. Misfortune, Varus, Cassiopeia, and Draven. So we haven't seen a lot of Draven play. I think this is the one that stands out for people, but I think with the Draven buff to R, he's definitely in a good state. I think you wouldn't want to play it into any of the AD carries that are above. Maybe Xayah, you could play it into Xayah and play Morgana Draven, but you'll be, of course, very risk prone. When the great Draven players will begin to resurge, we're going to see Draven be very effective. I think Draven is strong, but the Cloak of Agility nerf definitely hits Draven, in the gut at the same time as he gets the buff from his R change. But every AD carry gets hit by this, except of course the AD carries that are in the top. So that's the silly part about this. The best AD carries in the game do not get nerfed by any kind of item change with Stormrazor. Only Cloak of Agility, of course. C tier, I think, still decent champions. I would consider them lower tier than the other ones. There are moments where the C tier champions are indeed better than the B tier champions. So you'll have to keep this in mind as we're going through. B tier champions are definitely counterable and also reliant on some specific supports. C also, so there are cases where the C tier champions are better than the B tier champions. The reason I put Lucian in C is because I just think he's better as a mid laner and a top laner right now than an AD carry. Ezreal, we saw in the Mortals game that he can be very powerful in some rare scenarios. Ashe as well has seen some play. Dignitas played it. And then Jhin is something that's always going under the radar, so I put it up there. Yasuo, I put him as a niche kind of guy here. In some cases, it can be very strong. I think it's completely depending on the player. I think Yasuo definitely, is strong, but there is a certain element of risk to it, because if you fall behind, there is no other way than forward. Next in line debate is Caitlyn. Caitlyn is very reliant on what the support meta is, and right now the super meta is just not good for her. Morgana and Thresh, I think, are relatively low tier, and as long as that's the case, we'll just have to wait for Caitlyn to, get some buffs, in the sense that Leona and Nautilus has to get nerfed. You can play Caitlyn Tam, but there's no reason to play Caitlyn Tam if you can play Varus Tam. It's just better. Ashe Tam is just better. Jhin Tam is just better. Cassio Tam, whatever, right? So Caitlyn, I would put it in bait tier. Last, hidden OP, Taliyah. There's been a lot of players tearing it up solo queue with Taliyah. She has a very good synergy with the support pool that is being played right now. Can be played with Shen bottom as well. Is very powerful because her base abilities have so high numbers that they are compensating for the lack of damage from her R, right? And she stays in that range of being level 6. 1 to 5 is basically around 9-minute mark where she reaches level 10. So she keeps that sweet spot where she is super strong for even longer. And at the same time, her biggest difficulty in mid lane is that in order for you to hit your W, the enemy has to be bad. You can place your W perfect, and if the enemy moves perfect, you're going to not hit it. So when you have that CC and you can follow up easily with the Taliyah combo, in a lot of cases you one-shot. You play Dark Harvest, because honestly every combo you make, you get a Dark Harvest stack, very similar to what you would do with a Brand. And later on, Talia, you know, the only weakness of Talia is still the support meta is a meta that can easily commit on her with Nautilus and Leona. In early stages, it's almost impossible because you just put down your rocks with Talia, and then when Leona goes through them, she's going to get one-shotted. So early levels, Talia is great. Level 1, she's super powerful. Her base numbers are super, super high. I would recommend you going GLP into spell penetration, and then probably a Fiendish Codex into Death Cap. Sometimes you can squeeze in a defensive item with the Fiendish Codex if you want to, whether it's Zonya or Banshee, and you'll have a lot of success in your games. The weakness of Talia, as I mentioned, is all-in, assassins, so in solo queue sometimes you might struggle. Also, if the enemy realizes that they have to go MR in the runes, meaning MR runes and then maybe rush Mercury, then they're going to get double value on bottom because most supports also do magic damage. Unless your name is Pike, you're doing magic damage. Okay? The other one is Ziggs. He got some buffs in 10.2. The reason I think he might be very strong in bottom is because it's becoming more and more difficult to break through. Ziggs is very good at defending his turret, and if you're playing something like Shen Ziggs and you're just surviving your lane, Ziggs can be played in a way where you just give as much time as possible for the enemy. Right now, we're in a meta where Baron is very hard to kill. Very, very hard to kill because there's no mountain, no infernal. And if Ziggs ult lands on top of the enemy head while they're doing it, that can be enough to basically push away. And Ziggs also has the W, very strong for platings. Also, when you have your Shen ulting away into topside, you can just ult the wave, you can clear the wave, denying any potential retaliation from the enemy. So just Ziggs is a very strong weak side champion with the buffs, with the buffs on the slow, with the buffs on the distance of W. I think Ziggs is in a good state. You're just playing with Spellbook or just TP on bottom, and you can enjoy. He's not some crazy all-inner, but of course, if you have a support that sets you up, it can be very good. I just think Ziggs is the perfect weak side champion. It all comes down to what damage mix you have on top side. Just imagine a scenario where the enemy, you're split pushing, enemy wants to do Nash, Ziggs ults the Nash, and you'll always have an easy way of defending it even though you are playing the split push game. So that's why I think Ziggs can be hidden OP. The difficulty is still AD carries in mid, but I think Tristana definitely needs to be played more. Okay. So the next in line, I guess we can go, we talked about Tristana, we can go to mid lane. Funnily enough, I didn't put Tristana in my graph, so I trolled there. Just imagine Tristana is here. Let me just find a picture of Tristana and then maybe I can throw it in there. Let's see, Tristana picture. Okay, that's mobile fire, they're gonna sue me. Tristana, where are you? I just want to save a picture, Tristana, please. Okay, save image as, save image. Then let's toss you in here. Boom. Okay, so let's put Tristana in the hidden OP tier. Let's put him here. Okay, so first and foremost, Akali. This champion doesn't have a weakness. This champion has been broken for such a long time. It's also the champion that has allowed the EU mid myth to stay. I think a lot of mid laners are using Akali as a crutch. They don't understand how to play side lane, and then they have 15 dashes to get away. So I'm just waiting for this champion to be gutted to the ground because this champion is just so broken. It can also go top lane, has very little weak matchups beyond like maybe, I don't know, Rumble you can play into, maybe LeBlanc, but that's also losing 1v1. You could potentially play, I don't know, you could play Gangplank, but it's not a lot of Gangplank mid players. It's just OP. A tier, Syndra, LeBlanc, Rumble, Kiana. Rumble, Kiana, they are of course flex picks. They can go top, they can go jungle. Well, Kiana can go jungle and Rumble can go top. But of course, we've seen Kiana top as well and Rumble jungle as well. So I'm not gonna take it out of the equation completely. LeBlanc is super, super strong because Ryze has become weaker and Syndra was disabled. That's why we saw so much LeBlanc action. These are the two staple kind of bands for a LeBlanc setup. The trinity of champions that are good into LeBlanc would be Syndra, Akali, and Ryze. But I think the Ryze LeBlanc matchup has become more and more playable as Ryze players have taken the approach to make their runes more scaling, meaning that they are not running Corrupting Potion, they are not running, sure, they're running Taste of Blood, and I guess just the Corrupting Potion tech is something that Ryze players need to start doing so they can win lane against LeBlanc, because they're just not doing it. They're just starting Sapphire Crystal, and LeBlanc has room. And then, of course, LeBlanc is always a 1v2 champion. It's not a champion that is designed to win or to destroy 1v1. It is about setting up ganks and then snowballing and then becoming so oppressive because you can force your damage on the enemy always. So LeBlanc is one of the best snowballers in the game, also one of the best gank setup champions in the game. And also always when you have a support meta that is so engage heavy, mobility is always king, because even though you play Victor, Ryze, Cassio, you're going to struggle against whether it's a Rakan or a Nautilus or a Leona, because not struggle, but you're going to be able to you'll be more contained than you would want to be. And LeBlanc, honestly, most of the time doesn't give a shit. Rumble, of course, the flex. Rumble mid lane is very strong at getting prio, can buy Mercury into a lot of matchups and do quite well. Good to fight around dragons. This is what Doinby ushered in, and Kiana is also self-explanatory. B tier, I put these champions here because of their interaction with the support meta, and me feeling that the champions in the A tier will always do well into the B tier champions. Cassio is strong, Ryze is strong, Victor, we've seen success, Orianna as well, Alzir, they all have a place in the meta. I think the A tier champions are going to be more successful in general though, maybe by a percentage or two. Nothing in C tier. Niche is kind of packed this time around. I think Lucian, the reason I put him niche is because there are some players that just shouldn't be allowed to play Lucian. I think Lucian mid is super strong. I think, for example, Perks can play Lucian mid and do well into all of these champions up here. Lucian is maybe one of the champions that could lane against Akali and do fine, but still Akali should be winning if Akali is equally good. Irelia is also niche because Irelia can be very good into the meta that we mentioned here, but it comes with a lot of risk and you need to have the right player for it. Mordekaiser and Ornn, I put them in niche for the right reason, because you have to gain something big from top lane in terms of the flex, meaning like if you're sending Ornn and Mordekaiser into mid lane, you better have the best matchup of your life and top lane that is going to win you the game. They are not the most optimal mid laners, but they can manage, and the gain needs to come from top side. Yasuo is also niche because the comp it's very comp dependent and also player dependent. There are some few players in the LEC that I would allow to play Yasuo, and those guys we're just gonna wait until they pop off. But then there's some Yasuo players that just don't know all of the mechanics, and they don't deserve to play Yasuo. Vladimir also sometimes a soft counter to strong 2v2s that can be dangerous. We saw it in the game where Pantheon was picked, Vladimir got picked into it. Vladimir can be picked into Yasuo, can be picked into Ornn, can be fine into Irelia. It's a denial. It's a denial pick with good scaling. So I don't think it belongs in any tier, because some games it's S tier, some games it's toilet tier. So that's why it's kind of in the niche section. Bait, I put Pantheon because everyone has continued to ban this champion, but I think this champion is very, very weak. In solo queue is not that effective either. Champions that usually have global presence tend to get gutted pretty hard. After the World Championship, people just kind of didn't let go. It does throw you off a bit because you need to think about the global, of course, but Pantheon falls off so freaking hard, and I don't think I've seen Pantheon win this year yet. Hidden OP, it's not really hidden, but Nautilus, I don't get why people don't play him more in the mid lane. I think he's absurdly broken in the mid lane. The 2v2, especially with the jungle meta, is super powerful. Diana also, I think, is really, really OP. Surprised only Fnatic and EDG are the ones that played it. EDG Scouts played a very beautiful Diana, and Nemesis had a kind of 50-50 of a performance. One fine game, one fine game. Um, I think Diana needs a nerf. It's coming in 10.3, and I think this is a window that not enough teams abuse, because I think Diana can also be flexed, meaning that Diana can be sent into top, and I think this champion is definitely strong. So the reason I put Karthus here, everyone's gonna question mark ping this, is because I think there is room to experiment with Karthus because of how well he clears jungle. Maybe you can go smite and you can buy your jungle item from behind, and maybe there is a room to semi-funnel because of how the jungle functions. You have something in the jungle that can clear jungle, but a jungler that doesn't necessarily need that much gold, meaning that you have like a supporty champion in the jungle. Let's say you play Nautilus jungle or something like this, and then you play like a funnel strategy. There is a chance that this is all bullshit what I'm talking about Karthus, but I think there is room to experiment. And since I'm not on a team, I don't have the room to experiment with 5 guys. Karthus funnel, I think, is definitely an idea that should be explored. And this can be said about a lot of things. It could be Talon with Smite. This could be Echo with Smite. And funnel isn't the same type of funnel that is plaguing your solo queue with Master Yi and Tarek, just Master Yi taking everything. It's a semi-funnel where the jungler and the mid laner are trying to make it as efficient as possible in terms of taking jungle and also taking mid creeps, because junglers just don't have enough time to clear everything. So this is where it becomes interesting if you want to achieve maximum efficiency. Tristana I mentioned before. I think Tristana is also very good into a lot of these matchups. I think it's good into Syndra, good into LeBlanc, good into Kiana, good into Syndra, I guess, is arguable. Syndra can E her away when she W's in. It all depends on how much space Tristana has, so I would say it's like 50-50, not good. But I think Tristana should be played. I think Tristana is super strong. Crit items are in a really good state, and AP carries in bot lane, I think, are also quite strong. So I think Tristana, Syndra flex is going to come back next week. Like Tristana, Syndra flex is going to be super powerful. I think Tristana is a wonderful mid laner that more players should play. So that's for mid lane. As for mid lane, we talked about 2v2 and jungle synergy. So let's just bring up jungle. Jungle we slotted in there. Okay. So the reason I put Trundle and Bait there is because we saw Immortals picking it, and I thought it was hilarious. S tier is Gragas. So jungle is in a shit position. Jungle is very weak. So you need to pick the champions that do very much with very little. And Gragas is just perfect for that. Gragas win ratios are also through the roof. Gragas is just such a powerful champion with gold, without gold, with middle gold, with investments in new technology, and then, without liquidating those, any type of financial situation, Gragas is doing fantastic. Early game is super strong with Predator, super strong with Flash. There is just no weakness to Gragas. His weakness was the junglers that just could outpace him in terms of clearing, in terms of getting ahead and then having a level advantage like Olaf or Jarvan with a level 2 invade, but that's just not current right now. You can get level 3 in so many ways, and that's a big buff for Gragas because his difficulty was reaching level 3, and now there's too much variety in terms of how you can clear your jungle. Like you can go take 3 topside camps and be level 3. It is very difficult for a Jarvan to deny this. So Gragas is by far the best jungler in the game. A tier, we have all of this crap, the usual: Jarvan, Elise, Rek'Sai, Kiana, Olaf, Talia. I was considering putting Kiana in the bait tier because I think people and teams have a hard time understanding when it's good and when it's bad. And I will have a hard time explaining when it's good and when it's bad, but there are just a set few champions that do well into it. And those champions tend to be the ones that are mobile. I think the Fnatic OG game is a perfect example of when to not pick Kiana because the whole enemy team is very mobile. And there's Gangplank fruits, and there's Kiana ultimate, and so forth. Olaf as well, considering putting him in the bait tier because you just can't snowball hard enough with Olaf. But I've seen some games where Olaf does, so I'm going to put him in A tier. B tier, I think Kha'Zix's Nocturne Graves are very niche. Uh, it is what it is. I don't think it's anything out of the ordinary. Like we might see them get played sometimes. Also, I put Talia in here because I think Talia is super strong. Kadril showed it against Olaf. I think Talia is perfect also for the new jungle. She can get level 3 very easily. She can focus on taking big camps with her Q. Red buff, blue buff, and Grom, for example, get level 3 contest, and her early ganks are very strong. Also benefits heavily from junglers not reaching level 6 as early, because most 1v1s she starts to lose as junglers reach level 6, and with the current junglers reach level 6 very late. So God bless Talia and Elise. Both are definitely better because of this. So I would say, if I had to choose, while A tier is a thing of preference, if I had to choose my preference, I would put Gragas, Elise, Talia as the top 3, with Gragas being a clear first. Niche, Lee Sin. The reason I put Lee Sin here, I would put him S tier. Believe me. I would put him S tier because I think he belongs in S tier if the Lee Sin player is super good. But there are so many shit Lee Sin players that don't deserve to play Lee Sin. We honestly saw some great Lee Sins in North America. I liked Svenskren's Lee Sin. I liked Blabber's Lee Sin. And yeah, that's about it. And hopefully Brox's Lee Sin will be good. There are some players that just don't deserve to play Lee Sin. That's why we put them in the niche. Otherwise, the players that deserve to play Lee Sin, S tier. You enemy pick Gragas, you pick Lee Sin, fantastic. You're happy, you're in a good state. But there are some disgustingly bad Lee Sin players out there, and we don't need to name them by name. This is no reason to be inflammatory. Ornn, the same reason that we flex him to support, the same reason we will put him in the jungle. Right now, if you put Ornn in the jungle, sure, you'll upgrade items very late, but he provides the same type of power as Gragas. His ganks are not amazing, not the greatest. At 6, they're quite strong with the spellbook and all that jazz. I think Ornn jungle should definitely be explored as a tank in the jungle because all you want here is just you just want tanks in the jungle. That's it. Tanks in the jungle. It is just the best way to approach it. So I think Ornn definitely might be hidden OP, might be niche. I think if you get something out of the matchup, Ornn jungle could definitely be a positive here. Zac as well. Zac, I'm trying to think of scenarios where he can be good, but Zac benefits the same way from the jungle changes, that he can get level 3 easily, and if you manage to get level 5 with Zac, then you're through hell. And I think it's so punishing for junglers now to gank, and I think Zac definitely will have occasional opportunities to show up in the meta. Ivern as well fits the same boat, but the jungle changes is definitely like kind of a nerf for Ivern. Ivern, considering he has to spend time and wait for camps, and then he has to clear and run again. The new jungle is very awkward for Ivern, but just with how the gold situation is with jungle, I think Ivern might show up, especially against something like Gragas. Nidalee is also niche because, same as Lee, there is just some players that can play Nidalee and some players that can't. I think Nidalee sometimes can be fine. Hidden OP, I put Nunu and Skarner because they just fit the same bill. They are not so gold hungry, and they can fit the purpose of being strong in early ganks. Skarner level 6 being late is something that you might be a question mark, but I think his ganks pre-6 with Predator is also good. I think anything that can use Predator is definitely happy in the current jungle. You rely on Predator to set up ganks, and then afterwards you are an ult machine. So Nunu and Skarner, maybe even Ornn, put them in a hidden OP file. Jungle is on fire. Jungle is on fire. Let's leave it at that. Top lane. A lot of baity ones there, courtesy of Fnatic. Akali S tier. Akali is just the best champion in the game, next to Senna and Gragas and Drakan. If for some reason you see a game where the enemy drafted, Gragas, Akali, Senna, Tam, and let's think of. Honestly, you would just put Akali mid if you do that, and then you just pick a top laner that is Gangplank or something. Nevertheless, we don't need to think about dream compositions. Akali. Akali, we talked about. Gangplank, I think, is almost S tier because he does fine into Akali, and also Gangplank's ult is unbelievably powerful right now. A lot of objective focus in the meta, and also very immobile AD carries. Also very immobile mid laners occasionally, and I think Gangplank is just too powerful. His ult is just too powerful for this. The only reason I put him in A tier is because all of these top laners here have a good matchup into GP. It is a good matchup, but not a hard counter, right? Not a hard counter. Rumble does good into GP, Aatrox does good into GP after level 7. Aatrox is going to begin to all-in GP and find kills. Mordekaiser, even though GP can eat Mandarins and get out of Mordekaiser ult, he doesn't need to rely on ult, and honestly, in a lot of cases, GP not being able to use W is as much of a handicap as Mordekaiser not being able to use R. So, Lucian, also up there. I considered putting him niche, just the same way I did in mid lane, but I had a conflict of thoughts. I didn't do these tier lists at the same time. They've been like occasional work. So this is also something that could be niche, but if you're a Cabochard, you can play it. If you're a Wunder, you can play it. Cannon also fits the same bill, A tier. All the champions in A tier can definitely lane against each other and have a good matchup against each other. There's windows of opportunities for both. And if you are in the A tier and you're being played, then you're happy because it is tough to find a situation where these champions are going to be weaker. Rumble, I'm considering lowering him in the tier because there are occasions where he is not that great for your team composition, but just because he can go mid lane as well, it is hard to go wrong with Rumble. One occasion where Rumble was a shit pick was, for example, in the TSM draft, where all Rumble did was set up Aatrox to buy a lot of magic resistance. B tier, I think the biggest surprise for everyone here is going to be Ornn. Ornn honestly doesn't have that high of a win ratio. And with a lot of Braum being played in the meta right now, a lot of mobility finding its way in the mid lane, with LeBlanc being high prio, Zyra Khan being high prio, Tam also saving AD carries that might be in danger of Ornn ult. Ornn is not that fantastic. If you go and take a look at some online resources, you will see that Ornn's win ratio isn't that glorious. A lot of the top teams are not playing Ornn, and I think you should follow suit. I think worse teams definitely should play Ornn. They should definitely play Ornn, but Ornn is sitting now at a 28% win ratio with 18 games played. That is a disaster. And I think the reason how you can make Ornn better is to put him in the jungle, put him in the support role, and use him for mid lane. I think just sending him top over and over into top laners that in a lot of cases are going to be more useful than you, it is quite tricky. Ornn, I think still, if you are a weaker tier team, I still think you should draft Ornn. If you are on the top end, you're not going to draft Ornn because the other top laners are just better. Mordekaiser is super powerful, especially in a meta where there's so many melee supports. Basically, what you do with Mordekaiser, if you're playing in solo queue or you're playing in competitive, you just are the enemy support, whether it's Braum, Leona, Nautilus. You can 1v1 them easily. For some reason, no support is buying QSS. You can 1v1 easily and you just remove so much utility from the enemy team. Whether it's Tahm Kench, whether it's Rakan, whether it's whatever, just ult the enemy support, kill him, and win the game. So I think Mordekaiser, Aatrox, GP, super strong top laners. Super strong. B tier, I mentioned Ornn, Kled, Gnar, Shen, Camille, your standard top laners. C, Maokai, you just have to put my brother Maokai up there, can't leave him hanging. Niche, Vladimir, Irelia, same reasoning as the mid lane. And Bait, Pantheon. The reason I put him here is the same reasoning for mid lane. I think it's even worse top. Swain is a big bait. Swain got nerfed with Nimbus Cloak. Swain got nerfed with his kit in general. He's good as a support, barely good, and that's it. There are some players that are allowed to play Renekton and some players are not. Huni is a good Renekton. We saw him smurfing and doing super well on the Renekton against Golden Guardians. That's a good example of a good Renekton. Renekton Elise snowballing and then later finding a lot of good flanks. Khan is allowed to play Renekton, but then a player like Odoamne is not allowed to play Renekton. So 98% of top laners are not allowed to play Renekton because they just don't know how to be useful. They don't know how to be useful. Something that we saw as well was E-Star versus FPX. There are just a lot of AD carries, a lot of mid laners that are just good against champions like Renekton. And to my surprise, the Golden Guardian game, like Huni. Actually, Huni played Renekton not against Golden Guardian, it was CLG. So forgive me for misspeaking. It was against CLG. Because I just remember now that he was killing Crown and killing the whole backline, Stixay getting chopped up by an alligator after, honestly, what's his name? Smoothie got a very good engage that killed Victor. But they were 10k gold behind, so whatever. So, baity. Swain, Renekton, Pantheon, big bait. Hidden OP, Diana. Still, I think Diana 10.2. Look out for the teams that abuse it. It is time to abuse it, if any. She has a lot of difficult mechanics that you need to learn, but definitely, it's worth it. She's getting nerfed on 10.3, so maybe it's not worth it. Who knows? Okay, that is my tier list rundown. I hope the tiers make some kind of sense. The hidden OP, it's just that I think it might belong in the meta, This might be the next evolution of the meta. Of course, I'm not scrimming and I'm not privileged to any scrim information. I am looking only on the competitive games that are being played, and usually what you can do if you are interested, if you are looking to have some kind of interest in looking like if you have an interest in understanding how pro teams draft these videos, I'm going to release them weekly with changes, also in terms of changes, and also the mindset behind why some champions are stronger and some are not. Usually the strongest champions are the ones that just don't have weaknesses. Blind pickable champions that will consistently have a good output in relation to what is being played in other lanes. So when the AD carry position shifts and the AD carries change, then everything else has to change. Usually the most strongest role is what dictates the meta. So in this case, bottom is the lane that has the most amount of power. And in such a case, you are looking to pick champions in other lanes that are good into these bottom lane champions, and at the same time, strong laners. So that's why we haven't seen that much change. The meta is relatively the same. I think Riot Games was very happy with what they had at the World Championship, and they want to continue down that line. And then with the changes that we had in the off-season with Alcoves and the Drakes, I don't think it's too impactful. I think all is good. And then in general, the topic of the current meta, people say that it's very slow. I am inclined to agree. I think it is slow, but I think also teams are not playing at their best level, meaning, there's just a lot of opportunities not being taken. And the reason why the meta is slow is because Baron is very difficult to kill. There is no Mountain Drake or good Infernal Drake that is going to help you in your power towards killing Baron. So this is the difficulty, of course. Also, each individual Drake is much weaker than it used to be. So a lot of the snowball mechanics have been halted. Platings give you less gold. Jungle, stealing it away is less meaningful. Meaning, like, if you control the enemy jungle and you can only control one jungle at a time. Trying to control the whole enemy jungle is most of the time very optimistic unless you've taken all the 6 outer towers. But the enemy can always farm on the other side and stall out the game as long as there's no objective on the map. And there is very little risk that the weaker team needs to take before the fourth Dragon Soul or Nasher. And that's why we see a lot of these slow games. And at the same time, as I mentioned before, Nasher is very difficult to take. So the meta is slow and also teams are worse. We'll just have to give it time. Next patch, the jungle is being changed. So we're going to take a look at it then. That's 45 minutes of content for you. I hope it makes sense. If you guys have any suggestions, then please leave them in the comment below. If you guys have any ideas, then please send them my way. If you blessed during this video, bless your face. If you sneezed during this week, then also bless you. Thank you very much. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.